All right, welcome everyone. I'm really excited to be chatting today about Web3 identity, trust, on-chain reputation. But before we do that, I want to start with some introductions. We have a great set of panelists here today. Really excited to have some experts in the space to be talking to us about this. And we're all working in a really exciting domain, a really exciting design space that I think is super valuable to everyone, even people who don't think about blockchain yet. But I want to start with introductions. So I want each of the speakers to introduce themselves and what they're working on. And I think we'll start with Wayne. Wayne?
Hi there, my name's Wayne Chang. I'm the founder and CEO of SpruceID. Our mission is to let users control their data across the web. And instead of people signing into platforms should sign into your data vault where you control everything. We work a lot on credentialing technologies at Spruce that are user controlled. And my background is working in the Web3 and cryptocurrency industry for several years, especially on the decentralized identity side before starting Spruce about 3 years ago. Great to be here and thanks
All,
for having me.
all right, thank you. Gloria?
Sure. Morning, Christian. Morning, everyone. So I'm Gloria. I had strategy and operations at Karma3 Labs. So Karma3 Labs is building a verifiable ranking and reputation infrastructure that we use social graph algorithms like eigentrust to power contextual reputation graphs. So by doing so, we can empower all kinds of applications that will benefit from ranking curation and filtering out the noise for users. So my background has been 5 years in Web3 working on different decentralized identity and reputation protocols before joining Karma3. We're very excited to tell the community that we're going to launch a light paper introducing OpenRank. That's the open permissionless protocol that we're building in a few weeks. So very happy to be here to share more and excited to chat.
All right, thank you. And next we have Dr. Xia. I apologize. I don't think I can, not sure how to pronounce your first name.
Oh, never mind. Hi everyone. Yeah, I'm Fubiao. Also, my English name is Xavier. So, I'm the co-founder and DevRel from PADO Labs. PADO is a cryptography-driven project, and we would like to liberate the data and the computation with cryptography, and to make users truly control and own their data sovereignty, and make benefits from that. So this motivates us to keep building the solution with cryptography technologies like zero-knowledge proof, multi-party computation, and even fully homomorphic encryption. So to create the user-centric data-driven economy. And for me, I worked in blockchain industry from 2018 with a PhD degree in applied cryptography. And also most of my work is about the research, like how to solve the industrial problem with cryptography and also with privacy enhancing. Yeah, that's pretty much. Thanks.
Awesome, thank you. And last but not least, Evan.
GM, everyone. My name's Evin McMullen. Thank you so much for having us today, friends at a MetaMask. So I first got on chain a little over a decade ago, but I'm here representing my team at Disco, where I'm the CEO and founder. We believe that you are just like a disco ball, the multifaceted center of the party, reflecting your identity however you decide. Each facet of yourself, like your Ethereum address, your email address, your government name, reflects your identity differently, though they are all part of you. Our data backpack introduced the ability to send and receive verifiable data using the same keys that you already use on chain. And today, our dashboards support growth leaders in applications and protocol ecosystems, lowering customer acquisition costs, making it easier to target and retarget the users that matter and sift out bots, and to be able to understand the reputation of users across chains through their multi-chain identity and what we call the on-chain phone book, or the canonical list of businesses on chain what contracts and keys they use, and the type of reputation they issue. So from the on-chain phone book, we've derived our risk scores, what we call the legit score, as well as lead scoring to understand which users are most likely to be converted to be loyal customers of your ecosystem. Really excited to be here today with so many friends as well as a few new faces. And also here representing the good folks at boysclub.vip, supporting women and non-binary people in Web3 around the world.
Awesome, thank you. And I should probably introduce myself. So I'm your moderator for today. My name is Christian. I'm the head of developer innovation at MetaMask, and responsible for the open platform Step API and Snaps. And through Snaps, we've been building ways for to enable composability and extensibility of MetaMask, things like storing data, integrating different service providers, different naming and identity solutions. And so we've been, essentially working with the ecosystem to build out this layer of MetaMask that maybe didn't exist before, where you could essentially have identity and reputation within your MetaMask wallet and then leverage that for lots of different use cases. So, like I said, super exciting space that we're working in here. I think there's a lot of different use cases that we can enable over time. The part of the reason that we wanted to do this space is because I think this identity and reputation topic is probably very mysterious to most people. I think people have a general idea about what it might mean, but they don't really know how the tech enables that or what sort of new use cases are possible that weren't possible before. I think each of our panelists are working on different layers of the identity stack and in different areas, and working on unique aspects of the digital identity opportunity. And so I wanted to ask everyone a little more about what they're doing. So I'll start with Wayne. You're bringing composability to data. Can you describe your approach to that and how it is that you're doing that?
Sure. So there are so many different kinds of data that you have already. If you have a blockchain address, if you do any transactions on chain, that creates a history, right? And you might have multiple ones if you'd like to segregate your different transactions, right? You want to have one account for trading or a different one for something else. And all of these activities can be utilized by you. You can basically demonstrate, hey, I've traded over here, or I have these assets and my account balance is over this number, and prove a bunch of things about accounts that you control, right? And then you can already do this using a technology we build called Sign In with Ethereum, being able to demonstrate that you're actually the account holders across your different accounts. And on top of that, there are more advanced technologies like zero knowledge proofs, for example, that allow you to keep privacy while disclosing, hey, I have over an account balance of 5,000 US dollars, for example, right? So thinking about a lot of open source infrastructure that allows you to do more with the data that already exists, so that when you show up to a website or anywhere else, that can actually be a credential controlled by you, and you can prove aspects about yourself. We focus a lot on building open source tools for developers to prove these things based on your on-chain activity, using sign-in with Ethereum, but there are also a bunch of other data formats as well that have to do with digital signing. So someone will sign a statement about reality. They'll make a claim about, I think that Wayne is an okay guy, or, I think that this version of MetaMask went through a security audit. Right. And these are all statements that can be signed by people known as issuers. And anyone can be an issuer if we pick these open protocols, and they can be given to you to do with what you please, right? So I think that this is basically empowering the end user to have more control over data about them and decide what context and situations they want to share and how much they want to share. That's what we work on across our open source and our products.
Awesome. Yeah, I think I'd be willing to make that attestation. Wayne is an okay guy. Yeah, you let me know where to go make that.
Thank
Yeah,
you. I'll
thank
send you
you.
the link later.
Yeah. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, it's interesting too to talk about like open source when we're talking about like data tooling, right? And the ability for users to manage their data, because oftentimes when companies have access to data, they're very closed source about it, right? So it's a total paradigm shift in terms of how we
Yeah.
enable that for users.
And
Um,
the other thing I would add to that is basically we would want to ensure that when you're making that statement, it's for me to control, right? And not a third party to decide things about my life for me. And that would be optimal. And between you and me, that's a peer-to-peer transaction, right? So using the
right,
tenets of decentralization in that mode.
right, yeah. Evan, same question for you. I would love to hear about how your approach to data composability.
So, Montoya, as you said earlier, this is an incredibly relevant concept to everyone because every single person on this call has had an identity since the day that they were born. It is the, interface that they use to communicate with every person, every organization, every service that they have ever engaged in their entire lives. And so, we think of identity not as the thing, but the thing that gets you to the thing, the set of enabling characteristics or traits that make possible your interactions. And so the composability of this data is critical because in order to enjoy privileges based on traits that you have built up in more than one place, you need to be able to bring forth information about yourself signed by more than one party, sourced from more than one environment. So exactly as Wayne was saying, the composability of on-chain data is incredibly relevant. It is public and nominally accessible if it's indexed and managed correctly. And so at Disco, we not only allow both individuals and ecosystem leaders to aggregate data across chains and be able to understand the context of both assets and attestations, but we also make it easy to utilize the keys you already have on chain in a wallet, such as your MetaMask, to be able to issue, request, disclose, and manage off-chain verifiable data, meaning that you can use your keys like a personal notary stamp, signing things so that anyone can tell that they came from you and being able to carry around pieces of data signed by anyone who can, so that you can present them to any other party and they don't need to go back to the source to know where they came from and to trust that they haven't been tampered with. So we also recognize at Disco that there are many different types of data that are used as proxies for identity. At the very beginning, we had our public addresses and then signatures and tokens of different forms. As we all know, we now use ERC20s as proxies for social interaction, such as FWB, as well as their pure financial form. Then NFTs of many different standards and types can help to indicate things of medium to higher assurance, but not necessarily the type of bidirectional assurance that we get from two sets of keys agreeing on something, such as both being owned by the same party. And so we believe that combining multiple data primitives, combining many different sources of data on chain and off, incorporating everything from Farcaster to Spotify can help individuals be able to collect and define themselves in a way that is most meaningful and to raise their hands to be discovered by brands, partners, and services relevant to their interests so that we can turn the act of search on its head and opportunities and capabilities can find you based on what you want, as opposed to the business of user data that we observe today, where companies swap rumors behind your back via API without your knowledge or participation.
Yeah, and that last part is super interesting. I like the idea of users knowing what data different providers or companies or so forth actually have about them. The funny thing is nowadays, the only way that I'm reminded that a company has my data is when the data gets breached and I have like an email saying, we apologize, hackers gained access to your password or, some data was exposed or so forth. Otherwise, I really don't have a way of knowing like who actually has my data. You have to log into a bunch of different services to even find that out. So the idea of turning that on its head and having users be able to have control and like be knowledgeable about what data they're sharing and how they're using it is just I think a lot better for people in the long run. Yeah, Xavier, I wanted to ask you the same question. I want to hear about your approach to data composability and how you're thinking about this.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely composability of data is a very crucial add value in Web3. And our concern is that probably the most valuable data is off-chain data. I mean, most of the projects working on the on-chain data aggregation or on the on-chain part, but we think just by proven by the traditional web internet economy. So we think the off-chain data, especially the off-chain users' private data, will be very crucial and important for us to leverage. So we would like to find a way to reuse this type of data in Web3 and also in a verifiable and trustless way. So so that we can really help end users to regain their data sovereignty in that case. So we want to build a user-centric data sharing mode, and our main approach is to first build a one-stop of data portal for end users, let them to collect and retrieve their own data from different web data sources, and they can later share this data with different parties in kind of computable marketplace. So this kind of very straightforward idea to encourage us to first, we can just find some cryptography approach. For example, we can try to prove users' web data from any type of web APIs or even web page data. So traditionally, the user's web data is just trustable between the user itself and the Web2 server. And because the data transmission is happened between kind of TOS layer, the transport layer, security layer, which any third party will not be able to identify that raw data because all the data encrypted. So what we do is we try to using the we call the multi-party computation based on the TOS layer. We're trying to use this kind of cryptography approach to make the PADO node to blindly monitor the data transition between the user client and the Web2 server. So in that case, we can ensure that user's web data is indeed from that data source. So this which this address a very crucial, but people may usually forgot is about the data authenticity. So when we bring this Web2 data into Web3, the most important thing is how can we ensure the data is really correct, is authentic from that. So in our approach, we can cryptographically prove that data is from that web data source, and also we also very care about how we handle the privacy during this kind of data retrieval and the data sharing process. So just by leveraging some mature tools like zero-knowledge proof, but here we're using the interactive zero-knowledge proof, which is kind of different from the traditional ZK snarks people talking about. We use that because it's more lightweight and can be really suited for handling the ZK circuits in the TOS layer. So we can do the data sharing in a zero-knowledge proof way and to apply the determinization principle in that case. So I think this is maybe how we handle the Web2 data and share that data from the different sources in the different dApps. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah. Okay. So it sounds like at bringing some security and reliability to data sharing and to, web communication, which is super interesting because a lot of web communication these days is very basic. There's not a lot of security around how we use websites today and how we exchange data today. It's actually, if a web provider is being impersonated, users don't have very good ways to know that that's even happening. And so it's interesting how, some of the things that we're building are potentially fixing, longstanding problems within the web in general. So that's very cool. Gloria, I have a, similar, kind of the same question for you, but a little different. I know we've been talking about, you and I have been talking a lot about reputation. You're building in a slightly different area on top of identity, actually, building sort of like reputation tooling. I would love to hear a little bit more about that. What's your approach to that, and just tell us more about what you're building at Karma3.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, first of all, very exciting. I think we can definitely work a lot with the projects today at different layers to solve the same problems. And with OpenRank and Karma3, our approach is more of a systematic approach to build out a reputation system for a community. So that will pull all the data from different places that can be meaningful to solve a particular issues of reputation or trust for a particular community. This is based on, I would say, I want to start with like a micro level intuition that we all experience as humans. So before we even have large-scale societies, right? We basically in the villages, we have a word of mouth. We kind of like talk to each other about different things, and in the community of a village, we know who is good at what, who is the reputable person in terms of what kind of things. And that sort of knowledge is based on a social graph that is inherent in that village. As we grow bigger in society, and this whole scale just changes things, and we have to start to rely on centralized agencies or authorities to kind of like broke trust and reputation on behalf of the community. But as we can see with the development of Web3 and decentralization and other technologies, we can actually now have much better tools to basically directly know these peer-to-peer signals of trust and reputation at micro level and surface that through social graph algorithms such as PageRank, Eigentrust, and other ones, collaborative filtering and all that, to capture at a macro level the emergent results of reputation as a property of a different context. So what we're trying to do at OpenRank is reputation graph. It is contextualized reputation graph, and it's also verifiable reputation graph. So there's a couple of components. One is we start with data pre-processing to transform the data and preparing for different core computation. Then we do the core computation, which is like training and providing a commitment to the results conversion model. So we have like particular anchors of trust designed in the data structure to kind of mold and to reflect the particular context of a community, being like trust considerations or what is more popular or what is more being engaged in a social platform. Different contexts have different usage. Then we do like the inferences post-processing using the training model, run inference jobs, and construct ZK proofs for ranking results, and eventually validating the compute. So ensure this compute network is reliable and honest through cryptographic proofs. Any person or any entity can go and verify this. So we solve the problem for like centralized Airbnbs or eBay or Uber. They have to centrally putting a lot of resources to dictate who is trustworthy, who is not. That's resource intensive and also very ambiguous. You don't really know if you're being, sort of like censored or punished. There's no verifiability there. So yeah, that's basically what we're trying to do and the vision for us to build reputation systems.
Thank you. Yeah, so for the next question, this is sort of an open question to any of the panelists. What's sort of the fundamental problem that initially inspired you to work on this? Like, if someone comes to you and says, "Okay, I don't really see why we need that," or, I'm happy with my data just kind of being used, without my consent as it is today. What is sort of the fundamental problem, that you express that helps people understand why we need this solution?
So, to share a little bit of personal background, um, I grew up in a family where there were a number of my older relatives who were refugees and in their youth had to leave their homes and leave the government IDs that identified them. And so coming to America was always a challenge because they didn't have birth certificates, and my grandmother still doesn't have one. Didn't have passports and things like that. And so I was raised in a family where I was told often that when the government falls, and it will, the only thing you will retain is what is in your head, your knowledge, and what you know. And so when I first learned about Bitcoin, that was the first time that I realized you could own something other than basic knowledge that was an asset that could not be taken away from you. And so it was sort of from the core principles of self sovereignty and the ability to own a key pair that could control data that no one could take away that I realized that this introduced an incredible technology for those in positions of risk, for those outside of positions of power. I also realized that this cuts both ways. So in the same way that in the past public registries of ethnic minorities were a risk, public data put people, with traits that could be used to marginalize them at risk, that the same holds true today of the data that we put on chain. And so I think user-centered design in identity is of paramount importance if we are to prioritize the human part of human coordination tools.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think people forget, but even a lot of the identity information that we rely on today, especially with governments, it's way more rudimentary than you would expect. It really is possible for that data to be lost. It really is possible even today to lose track of that type of information. And absolutely agree with everything you just said. Um, okay, I know this is going to be a hard one to follow up, but I want to hear if anyone else wants to share the fundamental problem that inspired them to work on this mission.
So you, when you are, using your passport, right, or your driver's license or anything else that's physical today, that stays with you, right? And you can put it in a safe and you can retain it, right? As we transition to using analogs of these things in the digital world, a lot of these guarantees didn't stick because people were really focused on just figuring out how to make it work. Even if we're going to build one very large central efficient server to store all the data and use it to process, right? Which is how Web 2 and the internet has progressed historically. Only a few firms would have the scale to be able to hire the massive engineering talent that you need to keep one of these operations efficient, streamlined, secure for billions of people. Right. And you can probably, think about the few brands out there that fit into this. Maybe it's under a dozen, right? And just controlling all the infrastructure. So I think that technology that has progressed. We got cheaper silicon, faster processing. We have new technologies based on mathematics like cryptography that you've heard about. We have a bunch of these components now, 10, 20 years later. And I think that it enables new computing models where now instead of having to be a huge organization with thousands of engineers, it's feasible for people to be individuals or small organizations and basically have very low overhead to manage their own digital infrastructure, right? And the implication of this is that we no longer need to rely on super large siloed infrastructures that are hosted and controlled by huge entities, right? But instead, using these technologies, you can basically replicate more aspects of what we appreciate in the physical world. Something, being your property or the ability to keep something physically protected, and all these other things can start to extend to the digital world and basically give you many of the same benefits, right? So we were at a point before where it's okay, well, does this thing work at all? And we're willing to make some sacrifices then in terms of individual autonomy on the internet or who controls this and acts as a steward for you. But with recent advances in technologies, now it's possible for individuals and smaller organizations to basically have more control. And with innovations in user experience, key management, how you operate these different kinds of data, right? That's going to be a critical part of it. And I think that's a really key role that AI will play. One of the reasons why it's really hard for people to manage a singular data vault that might contain terabytes of their data is how do you even give someone access to what you want them to see, right? So, how do you go from your human natural thought, like I would like to share, all the photos from this vacation trip to this person, right? When that activity actually just starts to explode and how difficult that is to pull off as an individual, you might have to organize an album, you might have to generate a share link and all these things. But I think this is really somewhere that AI can bring a lot of benefit to adoption, where you can just say, please find all the photos from this vacation and share them with this person, and that can basically be just about done today, right? And there's some kinks in it and things, but I think that increasing the end user's ability or the individual's ability to exert that level of control and articulate that, critical to be able to implementing good data policies where only who you want to see the data can see the data, and you're able to collect a bunch of your data rights if you're in a state that supports them, and being able to exercise them automatically. So I think these are technologies from the future and architectures enabled by things like cryptography and innovators such as in the blockchain Web3 space.
Thank you. Absolutely. Gloria or Xavier, do you want to take the
Right.
question too? Go ahead.
Yeah, maybe just chiming a little bit about some of the insights that inspired what we built from like a more Web3 industry or crypto native use case point of view. We all know that permissionless innovation is basically what fueled this whole industry to grow so fast, to iterate so fast. A lot of exciting innovations came from there, but we also see it was increasing adoption and increasing amount of players in the space. There's a lot of like scamming and safe malicious actors, and also a lot of noises. If it's not malicious, it's just too much. And we don't have a very good way to differentiate those and filter those. So a lot of applications or projects or communities are struggling with trying to figure out who's a good actor, who's a bad actor, what behavior should be rewarded, what behavior should not. So they work on different data structures, trying to figure that out and approximate that, right? So I used to work for a project called Ontology and also later on Orange Protocol. So what we're trying to do is to help communities to model what goes into this whole determination of what is safe, what is good, what is rewarded. But a lot of the projects and communities struggle with deciding on what that model looks like because that's a very top-down approach that goes into a lot of governance discussions, that goes into a lot of like assumptions people need to make to justify that model. So that whole decision-making process is kind of like adding another layer of coordination and efficiency for permission and innovation. So, with Karma3 and OpenRank, what we're trying to do is to see if there's an alternative from like a bottom-up approach to basically just emerge from existing signals people are already kind of like using in communities and build on that and contextual on that on trusted peers. Then we can kind of like generate a more meaningful way to help people to determine what is trustworthy, what is not, what is reputable, what is not. So yeah, we're still in the journey of figuring that out. But I think that's what is probably very important for permission innovation for the entire space. I'll just pause there.
Absolutely. Thank you. I wanted to give a chance for Xavier to answer the question as well. What's the fundamental problem that you're solving, or what is it that inspired you to work in this space?
Yeah, great question. Actually, I'm more working on the cryptography technology part in there. Actually, before we initialize this project, we have been working on using some privacy technology in the enterprise data sharing. For example, if two companies would like to exchange their data sets, then definitely they need to follow some compliant laws to define, like, for example, I can share my data to you, but I don't want to share my raw data. So in that case, some kind of cryptography approach, for example, like multi-party computation, maybe fully homomorphic encryption is provided for them to enable such kind of B2P cooperation. So, but we think about technology, it's more we found more chance to bring this technology to the Web3 and for the end users. So a few years ago, I have been reading some academic paper from the training teams. They initialized the project DECO, and they think there's an approach to prove the status of the web data from the TLS layer. And we think that's very interesting, but they are using some quite costly approach to set up such a kind of protocol. And we think there will be some more advanced technology like interactive signal proof to accelerate the whole protocol and without sacrifice the security. So in that case, we think this bring us some new idea can really help users to build kind of user-centric data portal, which, for example, people don't have such kind of data data right in the traditional Web2 products. Just imagine you're using the TikTok, and due to the compliance, TikTok should provide you a way to control your data, but you need to just download your data from the app, and you actually, for the traditional users, they have no knowledge or technology to decode or how they can leverage that kind of personal data. So which means they provide a way, but the user cannot easily to make a benefit from that. So the PADO's approach, we think it's really help us to build such kind of platform or decentralize the platform for end users to control their data from different data sources and even from Web3 data, because most of the Web3 protocol are built from the TOS protocol. And this make us to provide such kind of generic data sharing and the computation layer for end users, and they can use in something like smart contracts to say, okay, my data can be first inputted and send the data to the blockchain, and I can use in PADO's approach to money from my data. So in that case, we can really realize the data sovereignty for the end users, and which really encourage us to build our tech stack from this kind of insights. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. And I have one more question, and I want to give some time for the community to do Q&A as well. So, as you probably are aware, I'm building a wallet along with everyone else over at MetaMask, and definitely focus on ways that protocols and dApps can integrate with the wallet more freely via snaps. And so I wanted to ask everyone on the panel today, what would you like to see from MetaMask, maybe moving into new use cases like identity and reputation, maybe moving beyond just the like push button, gamble, make money sort of like realm of DeFi, which nothing wrong with that. But definitely we want to expand what the wallet can do. And so I would love to hear about, what are some things you would like to see from MetaMask, maybe some cool new features or, just a different way that people use the wallet today. Anyone can take that one.
So over at Disco, oh, sorry, go ahead, Wayne.
No, I want to hear about Disco, but I'm happy to go right after. Or I can go first, up to
Totally.
you.
Totally. Well, it's always fun to have all the homies here. Certainly at Disco, we actually started off building pretty opinionated toward MetaMask so that we could optimize for awesome experiences around verifiable data. It's been really wonderful to see the proliferation of the Snaps ecosystem and so many different folks starting to embrace the way that we engage. One unique challenge has been how can we more easily understand the context of what we are signing when we interact with MetaMask? Now, obviously, there are a variety of different tools that can help translate or abstract this away, but sense making of transactions is definitely one area where we've seen some confusion with users. Another is simply being aware of what trigger words or considerations might cause an issue in the wallets. So, for example, the word claim got blacklisted by Coinbase Wallet, by Rainbow. And so, therefore, we ended up with some misplaced warning messages, warning users that things were dangerous when they weren't actually. And so I think perhaps one thing that might be helpful is just how can we all together as builders have a better vocabulary around what we're putting in front of users vis-a-vis our wallets?
Yeah, it's a good example. Yeah, definitely taking some notes. Go ahead, Wayne.
Yeah, I'm really excited about Snaps. So it lets you do so much more with this base wallet. It's been proven secure over, past a decade, I guess. Maybe not quite a decade, maybe a decade. Is it a decade? But it's like been proven as a solid base, right? And now we're adding the ability to add these extensions and increase people's use of their keys. I think that one of the most exciting things for me about cryptocurrency and Web3 is that nowhere else do you find such a large and captive audience for people who have key management figured out. And no one has it totally figured out. But for people who use wallets like MetaMask, they have these private keys that they use for pretty important transactions in their life. And they do a lot to keep it safe. And there are best practices from the UX that help them in that, right? So using this base of being able to sign things. Today, it's a lot of blockchain transactions. You could do a lot more. you could encrypt things to your friend, right, and to their MetaMask wallet, and only they can read it. That's basically part of the mechanism that Signal has. But we can solve things like discoverability because if you know those are the transactions your friend made, or they have an ENS handle or something, right, then you're able to verify who they are before you send the message instead of just a random phone number that's claiming to be your friend. Right. So being able to tie that with metadata in a peer-to-peer way, really, really exciting. Being able to issue your own credentials out of it, et cetera. It's possible through snaps and extensions towards that. I'm also very excited, talk a lot about this integration layer between personal data and your Ethereum accounts, right? How does that work? Well, one theory for how it works is by supporting additional protocols with your Ethereum address that are not necessarily making a blockchain address, but safe ways to do things like create a permission slip for someone to access your data vault. And the permission slip says where your data vault is, who has access, and for how long, and how do they authenticate? How do they prove they are who they say they are, maybe with their MetaMask wallet, right? So all these things are very possible once you have decentralized infrastructure. For those that want to know more about the nerd history of this, there was a great ecosystem, and still a great ecosystem, called GPG or PGP, right? Like a new, pretty good privacy. And it's a tool that is mostly used in the command line, where a lot of computer enthusiasts who tend to have a lot of time typing away at the keyboard and the terminal are able to use it to encrypt messages to each other. And there are some user experiences that you can run on your laptop as well. But for the most part, I'd say that the average technicality of their user base is very high, right? But you can look up all the cool things that are possible with that, including encrypting messages to peers. They had multi-sigs and a whole bunch of other technologies. The problem was always adoption, right? It's getting it easy to use to someone who doesn't understand what an elliptic curve is, nor has any interest in doing so, is able to just operate the technology safely and get a lot of value out of it, right? So that we can bring that base usefulness to people who don't know cryptography or know what a curve is and don't get excited about that, but they just care about the functionality and the use cases. I think the potential for snaps and other features to tailor the user experience to doing those useful things, that's really exciting for me. And I think you can build it on top of a base secure platform.
I'm gonna have to check the permissions on my Notion. I feel like some of you have been reading it. This is all really good. I'm gonna make my colleagues listen to this afterward. Gloria, Xavier, I'd love to hear from you. What would you like to see?
Uh, Maybe just very briefly, I think there's a lot of really cool social apps and consumer apps out there. Love to see them also building snaps. I think now they're building in different places, but actually it would be really cool to just see them as a snap in MetaMask. I remember this conversation at Denver that people were complaining about. They have to go like several steps to use MetaMask and to also sign a message and then get like the ticket to an event. But why not just do it, in one go in MetaMask? I think that would be really exciting. And second one is definitely super excited about like building Snap's permissionless distribution exploration with the Snaps team. We think that having that safe guardrail for the community will definitely help to basically make more things possible, make more permissions possible. There will be more diverse snaps and coming into the ecosystem. So excited for that.
Yeah, I think for snaps, so my thinking is like because we're talking about identity, trust, and reputation tonight. So that's one problem about identity is the fragmentation. So, for example, when we talk about modular blockchains, the liquidity will be and the liquidity fragmentation will be the crucial problem if we build a couple of app chains or different kind of modular blockchains. So, and I think this problem also exists in the identity part, which means people have more handles the different identity systems. So with Snap, I think probably we can kindly build a type of aggregated identity layer from the the buying capability Snaps provided, and also, yeah, I think we can bring a lot of interesting use cases by building such kind of upgraded layer with kind of identity composition, and maybe bring some off-chain and on-chain data together to innovate some kind of interesting applications.
Yeah, absolutely. You can think of like MetaMask or another wallet as an aggregator for key management, but over time as an aggregator for identity and data and different things that you can do once you have the ability to manage your own keys. So we're almost out of time. I wanted to give an opportunity for anyone in the audience who wants to ask a question. So if anyone wants to ask a question, you can request to speak at this time. We have about 12 minutes. Anyone?
While we're waiting for raised hands, I just wanted to invite everyone to get hands-on with verifiable data and identity. So feel free to collect one of the credentials I've dropped in the comments here, and you'll be able to pick up a gasless proof with your wallet to attest that you are indeed here with us today.
All right, we have someone. Go ahead. Sorry, you're muted. Anyone else want to ask a question? They might be having trouble with their microphone.
Hi, how are you?
Hello. All right, I hope everyone's doing well today. Did you have another question to ask?
Probably
All right, if
struggling with
there's,
technology.
yeah, just like me, honestly. All right. If no one else is looking to ask a question, quick one for everyone. Last question for the panelists. One project outside of what you're working on that currently excites you in the ecosystem, could be another product, a game, a DAO, could be a meme coin. Go ahead and you know, let us know really quickly. And I think we'll close with that.
I have to rave about Blackbird, which is a restaurant app like Resi, but it basically gets you reservations and you can earn rewards. I think it's especially notable because the use case is so clear, right? You want to like find a new restaurant and you want to get a nice reservation, have a great night out, a good lunch, like what have you, right? Like that. We've seen things do that. This is a new twist on it with rewards built in and reputations and social elements. But if you use the product, you could imagine someone who has no idea what cryptocurrency is or blockchain is using it, right? And I think that's the magical part about it for me. And I really, really am excited to see a new generation of these apps come out where you don't need to, set up your 12 or 24 word seed phrase as step one in the UX, right? And it's enabled by technologies like Privy and Magic Link and Web3 Auth and Dynamic. And so there are a bunch of people working on this problem on how do we basically onboard right the next million, next billion users. And we're even seeing protocol level approaches like ZK login from the Mistin team for Sweet, right? This technology is particularly interesting in enabling these seamless end-to-end experiences because you start with the accounts you already have to get an Ethereum account or a Sweet account or whatever you need to get going, right? What was especially interesting to me about the solution of ZK login is its use of zero knowledge proofs, as the name implies. But what it does is you sign into a service and then you put a proof that you signed in to the blockchain, but you don't actually put in that sign-in token that you got, because if someone has that, if you posted that onto the blockchain, it's a terrible idea because people might be able to impersonate you like a logged in version of your account, right? So I thought it was very clever to use proofs that way to basically authenticate and authorize the session. And that's going to be streamlined and not require an intermediary between you signing into the company, signing with Google or Facebook or whatnot, But at that point, there's no more party. It's just direct to the blockchain, right? So that being able to use the identity experiences that you're familiar with today and do something that's really useful, like being able to get a restaurant reservation, and maybe if you book again, you get a bonus or something like that. I don't actually know if that's the thing. I have to use it more. But that's great. What I'm also looking out for, I know you just asked for one, but this is all connected. um, is basically the next generation of privacy chains that are going to allow us to have basically encryption at the base level, or referring to off-chain data, cross-chain, something like that, so that you can start with, you can look at use cases where you don't want everyone to be able to see everything about it. Right. I think there are clever ways for restaurant reservations to make sure that you're anonymized in the herd privacy of it, getting airdropped a certain visit or something in a way that someone can't stitch together your trajectory across different restaurants, which is annoying, but maybe not the worst idea. But there are far worse things that you can do with privacy, right? So to solve the privacy problem just means that we can get more data and more interoperability under the control of people, and the ability to use it without negative side effects, right? So that's how I see that. Everyone talks about privacy, about like this end goal, but I think that like privacy is a side effect of user control, being able to share exactly where you want it to share, where you want your data to be shared, right? So I think that if we were to solve the privacy problem, we unlock all these use cases that are really, really valuable. My favorite example of this is for behavioral research. So for people researching, horrible diseases like depression, or other ailments, right? The study sizes are pretty low. Like you typically see study sizes from like n equals like 20, right? Very, very low compared to how many people are afflicted. And it's really difficult to get subjects for some of these ailments. So if we solved the privacy problem, people felt confident in sharing their notes, and it would only be used for research, not past that, right? People have journals and all these other things. We might just see like hundreds of times of that, if not thousands. And that's just better data for better science, right? So I think a lot is possible when we solve the privacy problem. And there are like base technologies that can get us there, in addition to providing good user experiences. So those are things I'm excited about.
Awesome, thank you. We had one late request for a question. Do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Yeah, my question is a bit different from what we've just heard. I really like the idea of the privacy and all that and sharing identity, but I'm concerned about something I just saw now. I just wanted to have a quick response. If it's true, is it true MetaMask is having a collaboration with Daylight for an airdrop?
So Daylight is a service that helps you find out if you have potential
Mhm.
airdrops, things that you can go and access. And you can connect to Daylight with MetaMask. I think it's just another dApp that works with MetaMask, as far as I understand. Yeah, and
All right,
I
all
would be
right.
very careful whenever you see any sort of like airdrop that's claiming, something that's saying like, oh, you can come and get
Yeah.
an airdrop, especially if you see it through Twitter. I would definitely double check that it's legitimate, because there's a lot of scams, and I wouldn't want
Mhm.
you to get scammed.
Yeah, you're right. Because I had a question like that. Someone just posted it in my community, so I was concerned. That was why I said, let me come check it out. Thank you.
Sure thing. I wanted to give maybe a few more minutes if anyone else wanted to take the question about project you're excited about, something you're not working on, but just excited about in the space.
Certainly. And just to call out Pepe Kid, you highlighted a really important identity problem, which is how do we know whose suggestions to trust? How do we know if something really how do we know if something really came from MetaMask? So that's a really great tie into what we were talking about earlier with the on-chain phone book and being able to determine the source of data. In terms of other projects that I'm particularly excited about, I wanted to call out some of the folks who are doing incredible work to build the cultural aspect of identity on chain. So specifically, I want to call out the All Ships community. We've got Dave Krugman representing them here. This collective of artists and creators not only produces incredible content and events, but also provides a path to on-chain livelihoods for artists and builders around the world. Also wanted to call out Riley, who's here with us today, starting her first show on Unlonely, focusing on the ecosystem of relationships among users core to identity on chain. And then, of course, as ever, if you identify as a female or non-binary person, or you love someone who does, please invite them to join us at boysclub.vip. This global community of women and non-binary people includes many builders in the identity space and is a great place to get started if you are just exploring these technologies and learning about them for the first time.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely one of the funniest names, Boys Club for the ladies. Yes, correct. All right. So, Gloria or Xavier, quick one, couple minutes.
I think there are different projects which are really interesting. One is called Xia, Jia. They work with emerging markets to help people who cannot have access to credits to get loans. And the model they work with is that you utilize your existing network of people who you already know in real life, and you help them to get some credit. And if they repay, you get this token incentive to basically reflect your contribution, but also that you can also vest them into these different people that you're bringing into the network. And if they are going to repay more in the future and have like a really good credit history, you basically get financial economic incentives based on that. So I think that's really interesting and quite practical as well. And the second project I think is really interesting is the Degen tokens that was just introduced recently. It's really cool how they were able to give liquidity and transparency and visibility of different people who contributed and have better reputation in the community through this token. And these people also have a say of like who else are going to contribute and trust, and basically just having a quota to be able to give that as a tip. I think it's not the same as what we're seeing before. It's a slightly different iteration this time that might really unleash a lot of innovation there. So quite cool.
Yeah, thank you. It looks like we are out of time. Xavier, you have a quick one?
Yes, I really quick. So perhaps my interesting project is beyond this ecosystem. So recently, I'm very excited about the AO, the act-oriented. Just quickly reasons. Like I found that it's similar to the typical Turing machine with very simple and solid design. So which perhaps we can find a new super parallel computer, which probably have more high ceilings than Ethereum. So and also the diversity of the blockchain based world computer is undoubtedly another reason to chat with. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Yes, I want to thank everyone who's participated today. You've shared so many interesting insights and really focusing on the key problems that we're solving and why these technologies are so important. I think you've done a great job of explaining why people need these things that we're building and why it's so important for us to keep pushing forward in this space. And if anyone has additional questions, you can message them to me. I can get in touch with the panelists and share the questions if you have any. But yeah, I just wanted to thank everyone who joined us today. And yeah, I've been very happy to represent MetaMask. Thank you to all the panelists. And yeah, we'll be doing more of these soon. So keep an eye out for more spaces that we'll be organizing on various topics in blockchain. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much for having us, MetaMask team. We'll see you all on chain.